And we are back for another great Friday, another episode of the Tech Behind FinTech. I am really excited today for our guest and our topic, Thomas McGonagle. Thank you very much for joining. Welcome to the Tech Behind FinTech. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Excellent. Excellent. As you all know, the tech behind fintech, I like to say real simply, we talk about the technology that powers the money. So that's one of the passions that I have about, fintech, financial technology, and talking to technologists and some of the things behind the scenes. So we are today's topic. We were going back and forth with this title, play on words. So we really like it. But a DevSecOps threesome, fintech, Kubernetes, and security. As always, before we hop into it, I have to introduce my guest and read my Thomas's bio. Since childhood, Tom has prioritized and emphasized human service and has always had a genuine passion for technology. Tom is adept at recognizing and personally investing in open source market leading platforms. He uses this insight and his genuine desire for service to help his customers with their most difficult application delivery problems. Thomas is the global solutions architect at Armory.io. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here with you today, Nnamdi. Thank you again.
Hey man, no worries at all. A pleasure to be here with you. In your bio, open source, you contributed to a lot of open source projects.
So I've been mostly selling them. So I've worked at four open source companies. I worked at Nginx and CloudBees and Armory and Red Hat. And so
Oh,
in that time, I haven't been necessarily contributing to the project, but I've been selling them as like as a sales engineer, and a couple other different roles. Yeah.
totally understand, man. All really cool, really cool. So, as we all know, before we jump into the topic of the day on our show, we talk about some current news articles that we find interesting. We're gonna go through that, get Thomas's opinion on it, and also the audience. And if you're out there, please drop a chat in, say Happy Friday, so we know you're listening. Uh, the first article of the day, which I found extremely interesting. Let me pull it up real quick. Walmart has quietly begun hosting Bitcoin ATMs. Obviously, cryptocurrency, things like that have been in the news. Uh, Walmart they have Coinstar kiosk, and Coinstar is in partnership with CoinMe has launched a pilot that allows its customers to use cash to purchase Bitcoin. There are 200 Coinstar kiosks located inside Walmart stores across the United States that's part of this pilot. What else? What else? Basically, after inserting bills into the machine, a paper voucher is issued. The next stage involves setting up a CoinMe account and passing a KYC, know your customer check before the voucher can be redeemed. The machine charges a 4% fee for the Bitcoin option plus another 7% cash exchange fee, according to the Coinstar website and verified by CoinDesk. Yeah, I find that very interesting. I mean, you're now taking it to a point where the adoption to mainstream America, not necessarily that technical or have access to exchanges, they're now able to purchase Bitcoin on a Coinstar. So we'll see how the pilot goes. Thomas, what's your take on it?
So I did notice this at my local Shaw's. I'm from Boston, and so we have a brand, a supermarket brand called Shaw's. And I did notice that they started doing Coinbase at the Coinstar machines. It's not Coinbase, excuse me, Bitcoin at the Coinstar machines.
Oh wow.
And there's a bagel shop, believe it or not, near me that has a different type of ATM for Bitcoin. And then all over it is plastered all these warnings for older people not to send people Bitcoin as part of a scam. So the police department in Acton, which is the town, has papered all over it. Don't you basically don't use this for unless you know what you're doing. It's very interesting. So there's been problems, right?
It is really interesting. Listen to the audience watching. Put in a chat if you've seen that locally. I personally have not noticed it in my local supermarkets or the local Walmart, but I find it extremely interesting. I mean, but a lot of the people I interact with, they would mostly get their crypto on exchanges or different things like that. But I just find it very interesting, the adoption to the mainstream America. All right. If you have seen one or have a take on it, definitely drop a comment in. Next, why not? Oh, here we have one from a LinkedIn user. Why not an NFT of the receipt? Sheesh. Good
That's
point.
cheap.
Pretty interesting there. That's from Medina Williams. It comes up LinkedIn user here, but I see her on my other device. Definitely a friend of the show and former guest. That's a great point. Let's move on to another interesting article. HBC launches new banking as a service offering on NetSuite. So NetSuite is a ERP system. What does that stand for? Enterprise Resource Planning. That basically helps companies manage and integrate important parts of their businesses and processes. So one of the one of the interesting things with this is it's going to now HSBC is now integrating their banking as a service platform into this NetSuite. It's an Oracle product system. What did they say here? The global banks integrates international payments and expense management to NetSuite suite banking platform. This is the first of this kind. It's a part I want to read here. Yeah, it's the first major enterprise resource planning suite with native banking solutions.
That's
Totally,
amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
and I think it feeds in to our conversation about fintech, Kubernetes, and security, because you can't tell me that they're not using a modern application delivery platform and different things behind the scenes. It's most likely a cloud initiative that they have
Yeah,
for
I
this
agree.
service.
I completely
So,
concur. Yeah.
definitely it feeds into the conversation. What's your take on this?
So I think it's fascinating. So I'm somewhat familiar with ERP systems. I've never used them before, but they're making banking as a service, right? Which really jumps out at me. So it's like Stripe. Stripe is like payment processing as a service. So they're trying to make it so that you can do transactional banking stuff within the ERP system. And like as you said, on the back end at HSBC, there's no doubt they're leveraging modern day application development and modern application delivery, and just like you said, there's no doubt. It's fascinating. I wish there were more details. I'm definitely going to pursue this. I'm quite interested. HSBC is a good bank, you know.
Like what the trend has been. Also, it's interesting. They say the bank's commercial platform division hired Google veteran Aman Narayan at the beginning of the month. So, what we see constantly now, especially in fintech, is that traditional software companies, the merging into fintech, whether on their own right, they're becoming fintechs of their own. Like we saw what happened. We talked about this a few months ago with like Facebook and WhatsApp, and now you're seeing actual financial applications within these companies, but also those executives from those firms coming into the financial sector and introducing, these types of, advances. So, definitely find that interesting. We got a comment from our audience.
Mm-hmm.
Vivek Dubey, great initiative, Tech Behind FinTech. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that comment. Appreciate the comment. Thank you. So, I think this is a perfect segue into our technology conversation regarding fintech, Kubernetes, and security. So, for the audience, Thomas, can you explain what Kubernetes is before we start diving deep into the security applications for it?
Yeah. So there's basically two words that really call out, and they are container orchestrator, right? So I'm going to start with orchestrator. What does that exactly refer to? It refers to an orchestra, like an orchestra, with the conductor waving his hands, making beautiful music with the orchestra, having the oboe section do this, having the violins do this, having the piano player do this, and they're conducting and they're orchestrating this orchestra. And so that's the second part of the word, the second part of the phrase. The first part is containers, and so containers are this this technique for basically virtualizing an application, and it's much more efficient than using old virtualization with like VMware or some of the other virtualization, KVM, some of the other virtualization technologies. And so it's really efficient. And so Nnamdi, you don't know this about me, but I was into containers before they were cool, and container orchestration before it was cool. So I was at Red Hat. I was on the team for the OpenShift team, version 1.0 of the OpenShift team, and I've been doing container orchestration for since 2010. So
Oh
almost
wow,
10 years.
that's
Yeah.
that's way before it was cool.
I'm sorry. It was way
That's
before
way
it was cool.
It was
And
like
so Docker came out. Docker is like the container engine, and so Docker came out in March 13th, 2013. Is that right? March 26th, or I'm getting a little confused, but in March 2013, and it was a big deal at Red Hat, right? Because we were working on our own. We were doing all this stuff in the Linux kernel, which is what Docker does. But Docker made it easy. They pushed the easy button, and so Docker came out, and Docker creates this container for an application, and it has all the bits and all the bytes that you need to make the application work. And then Kubernetes is the orchestrator. It's the conductor that manages it across a big cluster of computing power, of a big cluster of computers. What do you think about my definition or my description?
Oh, I mean, I think it's on point. I mean, obviously, how you described it, I like the history you bring forth in terms of the container side that you've mentioned. But yeah, I mean, when we start looking at Docker from a container perspective, that's one. When you start managing thousands of these containers, you need some way to coordinate those efforts. And Kubernetes right now is the leader in that market. I mean, I think they have there's different products around it, like Docker Swarm, if I think that's correct. But Kubernetes right now is the de facto leader, started by a Google initiative. Now it's managed by the I think the Cloud Native Foundation.
Yep.
Yeah, they manage that initiative right now. It's
Mhm.
totally open source, and you see flavors of it, right, within all of the major cloud platforms, whether it's Azure, Google, or AWS,
AWS.
have services within it that you can leverage Kubernetes. So yeah, explanations on point. Now, the thing I want people to get is, right, when you start looking at that from a historical perspective, right? When we talk about on-prem, right, where you have everything's managed, you bare metal, you have all these servers, data centers, and stuff. But what Kubernetes and the container side, it allows you to basically turn those initiatives into software. So now you're able to deploy it as code, which is a whole game changer that I'm going to let Thomas jump into. But along with like Spider-Man's uncle said, right, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So that's a whole other side. We start talking about security now that you can manage and deploy it and scale it up on the whim, how the security side. So but yeah, so please keep going on into Kubernetes and so forth for what you're seeing.
Yeah, so I think one of the in our write up for this talk today, we talk about how let me actually pull it up. I have it right here. We talk about how it's to say that Kubernetes is complex is an understatement, right? The learning curve is both steep and long, and I think that's really critical for people to understand. But an investment in Kubernetes is worthwhile, and like I was kind of hoping to maybe give some tips and tricks on some like really good techniques for learning Kubernetes and maximizing Kubernetes, and if anyone out in your listeners is interested in it, I would completely encourage them, and they're more than welcome to reach out to me. My email is thomas@armory.io, and they're welcome to reach out to me or look me up on LinkedIn or ping me on LinkedIn or whatever they need. I highly encourage it. Like I got into Linux. I'm 43. I've been in the IT profession for 25 years. I got into Linux as a young man, as an 18-year-old. Without really any background in computers, right? I was just very lucky. I basically carried boxes around a .com, and I discovered Linux back in 1990, 98-ish and 99-ish. And, that's what it feels like with Kubernetes, right? It feels like we're a little bit past the early days, but it feels like it's just something. It's the modern version of Linux. This platform to invest in, right? It's the modern version of Linux, or like in my bio that you read, I personally invest in these open source platforms, right? So I've invested in Nginx, I've invested in Jenkins, I've invested in Puppet, I've invested in Linux, I've invested in Spinnaker, and I've invested in Kubernetes, right? And it's a wonderful profession. It's to have these platforms, to invest in them, to get good at them, to become an expert, to be a part of a community, right? That's really one of the more fun things. I can talk about some of my Kubernetes community stuff that I'm doing, but it's just a great profession, and I highly encourage anyone who's interested to jump in.
Nah, for sure, for sure. Let's circle back now. Let's say that we're a startup or we're a fintech firm. Because I've seen situations like this now, which they're maybe using a containerized platform, but they now want to whether it's through AWS or Azure, but now they want to migrate over and really start leveraging a managed Kubernetes service. What are some of the things that you've seen in making that process smoother, and also from we could get into the security side afterwards in securing it?
Yeah, those are great questions. Those are hard questions. So kind of breaking it down, how do you move your application, whether it's a monolith, right? If anyone's familiar with that expression, which means like a big, huge, Jenkins is a monolith, for example, and then or a microservice. A Spinnaker is a microservice, right? It's made up of all these 8 different microservices that all communicate within the cluster. But moving from what's colloquially described as the brown field. The brown field is like the old field, and then a green field is like a new, fresh field, right? That's like a new, fresh project. Moving a brownfield project, whether it is a monolith or whether it's a microservice, into Kubernetes is actually very hard. It's something to watch out for. It's much easier to design a greenfield application and migrate it and subscribe to cloud native computing paradigms and approaches, and migrate a greenfield project into Kubernetes. And so that's really kind of like the first step. And then with with the security, so I do have a kind of a methodology, and I've mentioned it to you before. I hope it's okay to bring up. It's like Kubernetes methodology. So
let's talk about that.
So if you go to go.armory.io/KRAVERNETS, Kubernetes, and I can repeat that again, or we can put it in the chat, I guess. So it's go.armory.io/Kubernetes. I have a page that details this approach to DevSecOps for Kubernetes. And there's tenets on that page if you go to there. And so my first tenet of Kubernetes is to be aggressive but smart in your problem solving. The second one is to be vigilant in identifying and addressing challenges. The third one is to be proactive based on your current weaknesses or vulnerabilities. React quickly when you have to. Number 4 is be tool agnostic. Number 5 is invoke precision when executing tasks. Number 6 is employ simple and repeatable techniques. And number 7 is include situational awareness in all aspects of your practice. And then number 8 is understand the impact of stress on your planning and response. And Nnamdi, I believe, and this is very personal to me, but I believe the 2 most important are 5 and 6, which is invoke precision when executing tasks and employ simple and repeatable techniques. We can dig into that if you want. But yeah, do you have anything to add, or do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I like that overall. I mean, and I think that falls into when we start thinking about, overall, like we start thinking about supply chain attacks, right? So, what are the different components of your system, and how are you staying on top of that? When you start thinking about, access control and things of that nature, when what are some of the permissions base that you have? You start looking at some of the more stateful aspects of your Kubernetes infrastructure, whether it's the etcd server, who has access to that, and then at rest, are these things encrypted? So, it is like, how do you now start taking that and automating those processes to start ensuring the security in the pipeline? That's how those are some of the things that were on my mind.
Yeah, no,
And I think
like what I'm getting from what you just said is like a great deal of situational awareness. It's awareness of your access controls, of your etcd. So it's awareness of your environment, right? Like you need that situational awareness. I didn't explain this before, but the Kubernetes name comes from Krav Maga and situation, which is a self-defense system, and we chatted a little bit about it. And it's a self-defense system, but situational awareness is absolutely the most important aspect of it, right? It's not going down the deep dark alley, right? It's not leaving your etcd server, open to all sorts of connectivity and communication, and locking down your nodes and it's having an awareness of your situation, having an awareness of what your capabilities are, and and trying to be secure as possible, right?
not for sure. So, one of the resources that I use a lot, especially sometimes when doing some audits and things, I like the looking at like the MITRE attack and looking at the kill chain. Came and just for the audience to understand that, is just basically the series of steps that a threat actor will go through to gain access to your system and further exploit it. And came across a good one. And I think I'm going to credit at Microsoft. I sort of, I think that's initially where I saw this, and it's been reused for different ones. But I don't want to. I'm definitely not the author of this, but I love it. Because it's looking at all of the steps. Well, some of the well, say all, because when you say security, you can never say 100%. There's always another thing that you may have missed. But a good straightforward pathway of how to exploit a Kubernetes environment, how to gain that initial access, and so forth. Maybe we can spend some time and go through that, and then start saying, okay, based on what you've seen, what are some ways that we can automate that process? And before I go on, because I don't want to lose people, when we talk about, we never gave the definition of DevSecOps. It's basically from my, everyone has different takes on it. I like to look at it from a real simple approach, is looking at your pipeline from the beginning of your development all the way to production, and seeing, okay, what are the different ways that I can put security checkpoints in an automated fashion throughout that pipeline. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, may I offer you my definition? It's
Yeah,
very
please.
similar. Yeah, so DevOps, right? And then security has always been this afterthought. And so the idea is to shift security left in the software development life cycle, and then put it in the middle between dev and ops. And so there's actually, I'm trying to be kind of illustrative. So we have sec over here historically, and then we're moving it to the left and earlier in the process, and making it a part of dev and ops, and everyone's basically practicing security. Mm-hmm.
Cool, totally awesome. So when we're thinking about this now, it's like, how do we now apply this in terms of your when companies that leverage Kubernetes and start applying that same process. So in looking at what we just posted, right, you start seeing basically a kill chain approach. That's another way to, but specifically for Kubernetes, and maybe we can oh, something happened in my system. Yeah, so maybe we can kind of like just go through that initial access. And if you think about it, right, it 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 it's similar to like a weak cloud credentials. Whether it's Kubernetes, whether you're in AWS, it's kind of like, or whatever cloud that you're on, or even an on-prem system, right? Credentials, having a weak credentials can get that initial access. So maybe
So I have
understanding
a
that.
take on this, Nnamdi. I think of this kill chart. I love the expression. What was it called? Kill. I'm sorry. What?
So, like, usually we call it like the cybersecurity kill chain, but
Kill
I think
chain.
they're,
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, but they're using it specifically now for Kubernetes. Like if you this for the audience, if you look at the MITRE, MITRE, Google that, you on their website, they'll just have the kill chain. This is just basically for any type of infiltration, and they'll just show you the series of steps that a threat actor will go to. But this one is specifically geared for Kubernetes. Please, Thomas.
Yeah, so for me, this kill chain boils down to basically three things. So you have number one, you have containers, right? Securing your containers. Those are the individual application containers that are going to be running inside the cluster. You have the cluster itself, right? You have to secure the cluster. You can't have SSH access to your cluster nodes, right? You just can't, right? And that's an example. And then the third aspect is securing the Kube API. And so you interface with the Kubernetes cluster control plane. And control plane is like an old load balancer word, but you interact with the Kube cluster via a Kube API, and then securing that API, right? And so for me, there's three buckets for this kill chain. It's the container security, it's the Kubernetes cluster security, and then the Kube API security. And I think if we frame it that way, I think we can get our hands around this kill chain.
I like it. I like that. I like that frame. And what are some of the things that you've seen to help automate this process?
Yeah, so to be frank, Nnamdi, I've noticed you keep kind of coming back to that. How do we automate the security of Kubernetes, right? And so I kind of struggle. Like that stuff is being invented as we speak. We just had Kubecon last week, which is a very, very well regarded, very popular Kubernetes conference, or the Kubernetes conference, and there are a number of vendors tackling that issue. But to be honest with you, I don't think we're really there yet. I think there's I think there needs to be more maturity before we can start automating Kubernetes security. If you know what I'm saying,
No, totally. And so so that's a great point. So from an admin perspective, there obviously based on that, there are things you still have to do manually. I mean, it's similar when sometimes when you put the complexity of saying adding this type of container orchestration mechanism, but there's still, and I think that goes back into your Kubernetes, there's still some general principles, right? That if you perform, you can harden your system. So things like audit log, getting access to the Kubernetes audit logs, and then just looking for anomaly detection and things of that nature. Third-party integrations, or like how are you vetting your third-party systems and so forth. So maybe not, and I know I keep going back to, I don't know why my head's stuck in automation, but maybe some aspects we can kind of gain quicker insight by putting certain tools in place.
Yeah, so I meant to bring it up before, and I'm not sure if you want to search for it right now and show our speakers, but the NSA, the National Security Agency, came up with a list of best practices for Kubernetes security, and a lot of that is in those three buckets, right? That whole paper is based on container security, cluster security, and API security, right? And then I think there are opportunities to automate, like using CloudFormation, or using AWS's CloudFormation, or using Ansible, or using a infrastructure as code tool to manage your clusters if they're on-prem. Like there's definitely automation integrations, and I think that's what you're talking about. You're talking about how do you,
yeah, that's perfect. We have a comment from the audience. I appreciate its perspective on tech maturity as a prerequisite.
Oh, thank you.
I think that's from, I'm looking at my other thing, that's from Medina. Thank you very much for your comment. And so what type of other insights from the Kubecon? Let me take this off the screen at this point. What other insights from Kubecon did you gather? I think that was
so
great.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. I have a fragile newborn, and so I was home. I was working the virtual booth basically for Armory. Yeah. a lot of people weren't able to attend. It wasn't a very well attended conference, basically.
No, but the virtual booth though, so you still you interacted and
Yeah.
so
I gave 3 speeches. I gave a speech on AWS and Spinnaker, our Army Enterprise, our product. I gave a speech on LOLOps, which stands for lots of Lambda, right? So lots of Lambda. Lambda is the what's it called? The
serverless.
serverless. Thank you. The serverless, the AWS serverless product. And so I gave the speech on lots of Lambda, and then I gave another speech on comp ops, which is compliance and operations. And I'm actually speaking at the Open Source Strategy Forum next month in New York City to FinTech, open source FinTech listeners or people
Oh wow.
attendees on compliance and operations. And so basically, comp ops boils down to you do compliance gating. So you need to gate your compliance in the continuous delivery part of the software delivery lifecycle, not the continuous integration. Continuous integration is like Jenkins, where you build and test your software. You want to let devs like do whatever they want. You want to let them like dev basically, right? And then CD is where you gate and where you have requirements for people to approve and to make sure the software meets requirements and so forth. And so that's done in the CD. And so that's my comp ops talk. So I gave that.
No, that definitely sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about Spinnaker, can you just give an overview of that? Because
Yeah. So CI/CD, I was just kind of talking about it. So CI/CD is continuous integration, continuous deployment. So continuous integration is where you build and test your software, and then continuous delivery is where you gather those bits and you push them out to production using probably the most popular technique is called a blue-green deployment, and it's very, very, very popular with like the likes of Netflix. And like Netflix has never ever had. I have like Netflix running on all my computers and my phones and my iPad and everything. Never had a problem, right? And what it is, they use this technique where they deploy software 10,000 times a day to Amazon, to AWS. And they use this blue-green technique where they spin up this infrastructure and then they move all the traffic over to it. And if there's a problem, they move back to the old version and they seesaw back and forth all day long on new code. If they make one line change in Netflix code base, it gets pushed to production using a blue-green deployment, and then it just works. It's very powerful.
and how does Spinnaker play into that?
Oh, sorry. So Spinnaker is the continuous delivery platform that Netflix created.
Okay, nice.
An Armory Enterprise, my company, takes those bits and then makes it into a proprietary version. We have some proprietary functionality that's really kind of advanced with Terraform and compliance and GitOps. Are you familiar with GitOps? I don't mean to be insulting.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Really cool.
It's one of the things I want to dive further into.
Yeah, I mean, in the time permitting, you want to talk about GitOps? I think it's critical to talk about GitOps as part of a DevSecOps talk.
Let's go for it.
Okay. So version control is with Git is like a very, very popular methodology, and people have leveraged it with infrastructure as code to manage software systems like Ansible or Puppet or Chef, and then they have these and so all the modeling, and that's the right verb, all the model for the infrastructure is contained in software, and then that's managing Git. And so what GitOps does is it kind of turns it on its head, and it uses a CD technology like Spinnaker to pull down your infrastructure, your changes, and then push them into production in this continuous loop. So you make like a change in Git, you make a change to your code, you do a pull request, the pull request gets acknowledged and they're approved, and then it just makes it happen into the infrastructure. It's this really powerful technique. And so like, to put it bluntly, it gives you agility with your infrastructure, right? And it gives you agility with your code and your software. And so you can do these advanced things, and you can model and then integrate your changes in this sophisticated loop and get them into and get your software out as quickly as possible. It's really, really powerful. And the direct result is that you're more secure, right? You're able to make these configuration changes to your infrastructure, to your software systems, to your database in a very, very quick, agile way. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, definitely when you look at streamlining different approaches with that, and the more you can codify it and do things in the nature that you've mentioned, right? it from a security practice, it's one of those things when you're doing the same thing over again. So now it's not like, okay, I'm gonna do it different this time versus the next time. So then you're just further hardening that process, and it's easy to see gaps. So totally see the
That's
benefit.
perfectly put, Nnamdi. That's
Thank you.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
see the benefit in that.
Mhm.
So, in like in closing right now, right? Because I just want to stay just consistent with some takeaways that the audience can get from the fintech, Kubernetes, and security. We talk about we did a show on the that Kubernetes that kill chain, looking at the various aspects that you could be compromised. What are some takeaways that the audience can take away when
So
attempting to secure their platform?
So I know the NSA article sounds like it might be intimidating, but it's not. It's actually pretty easy to parse.
Yeah,
So that's a big takeaway.
you can put that link. I would love to
Sure,
put
certainly.
that link in chat. If you can chat it, and then I'll bring it to the forefront so people can see it in the video. I think that's a great resource. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, I'm gonna check that out as well. If you chat it, I'll put it on the screen. This way it stays with the life cycle of the video. That's a great resource. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, perfect. And so I'm gonna put in the private chat. It's coming your way, man.
All right,
Okay, so I just got it over to you.
all right, excellent. And what I'm gonna
So
do, guys,
I think that's a tremendous takeaway, right? I think my Kubernetes might go. I'll you that as well. Go and thinking about. You have that?
yeah, so it's NSA Kubernetes best practices.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just trying to put the title in before
Sure.
as I check it. And guys, this is gonna show up on this is going to show up on our streaming platforms: Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it on the screen so those in LinkedIn, you can see what. Obviously, if you want to, you can pause the video when you replay this, but you can just Google those things and it should come up. And I'm going to also put Kubernetes guide that Thomas talked about. Let me chat that right now. Adding it right now. All right. All right. I'm gonna you Google that, you can see that as well. 1 second. Put that on the screen as well for our LinkedIn viewers. You can go there. It's on the screen now. You can see it. On this platform that I use, when I put something in chat, it only goes to the YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and those platforms. LinkedIn, for
Got it.
some reason, doesn't allow you to automatically chat in, but you can see it on the screen right now. No, excellent resources. Definitely, thank you very much for providing that for the audience. Obviously, our focus is fintech, but these principles apply to other verticals as well. But our focus obviously is more fintech based, which is taking advantage from in a tremendous way of containerization, especially when you start looking at the startup community and the cloud native, as Tom mentioned, like more of the greenfield approach. With the more incumbents, right? It's a more of a re-architecture to especially when you're looking at a monolithic application, to re-architect, figure out, okay, how to break that into Microsoft services, start, to your migration plan to the cloud, and architecting how you're going to containerize certain things. It's a more of a tremendous process when you go from that. But with the companies that are starting up and they're cloud native, cloud first, this is their world. So, definitely looking at, and a lot of times you get in the habit of deploy, release, obviously, because that's what makes the money. But, you have to kind of manage that with security as you make that leaps. And usually with platforms like Kubernetes and so forth, as Tom mentioned before, that are complex, the more complex if a system is, the more you're going to see security breaches, just from the fact that people may not fully understand everything to cover. So, definitely take the best practices that Tom put forth in with the NSA, good resource, and the Kubernetes as lessons, and start implementing and seeing different ways that you can add it to your CI/CD pipeline. Tom, is there anything else you would like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tremendous pleasure. First of all, thank you very much for having me on, and I'd love to connect with you all. Find me on LinkedIn. My link tree is linktree/McGonagle. My GitHub is github.com/McGonagle. Find me out there, and my email is thomas@armory.io. I'd love to chat with you all. I'd love to connect. I am starting a burnout, like emotional and mental burnout. I've never really experienced it, but I'm starting a support group within the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So if anyone's concerned about that or has some interest in that, I'd love to connect you with our weekly support infrastructure. So
that's definitely awesome. And also, do you want to talk about give a high level summary on Armory before we end it?
So thank you, Nnamdi. So Armory is this wonderful company. This is actually my second time working there. I was actually laid off at the beginning of COVID, and then they asked me to come back. So I'm a you don't get too many second chances in life, Nnamdi. And so I'm there.
That's actually an awesome story. That just shows, like, I love it in a sense. It just shows how much you're valued. It's like, obviously for the beginning of COVID, for business reasons, things had to happen. But then they're like, listen, we definitely need you and circle back. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to.
No. Thank you.
And it caught me. I like stories like that, actually.
Yeah, no, I kind of appreciate it too. And it's full of wonderful people, and we sell an enterprise version of Spinnaker, and we're up to a whole bunch of different things. Come check us out. We are hiring in my department, sales engineering. We are hiring solution architects in professional services, and then we're hiring developers. We're hiring across the board. If anyone's interested, or if anyone has a question about Spinnaker or Armory Enterprise and the differentiation, my job is to explain that, right? And so I would love to have a virtual coffee with any of your listeners, and I'd love to chat.
Hey, and maybe on a subsequent episode we can like dive further into Spinnaker and because obviously all of these technology solutions can be applied to fintech. So that's obviously our interest. Anything around fintech technology and ways to help the development community, ways to help that community, and just also give some insights.
I would love that, Nnamdi. Thank you. That would be amazing.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll definitely keep in touch in that nature. You have a lot of information to offer. So like to drill into it, even if it, some of these conversations, the goal sometimes that someone's listening to it and it just sparks an idea, sparks a thought. Oh, you know what? This is something I wasn't thinking about for my company. Okay, let me look into this. Okay, let me further leverage this resource. So that's really our goal here at the Tech Behind FinTech. So definitely thank you for coming on, being a guest, and providing your insights. To everyone else, how to find Thomas, and thank you for tuning in. Please find us every week on Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard for our episodes of the Tech Behind FinTech. We go live once again. Our goal is to talk about the technology that powers the money, simply put, and really, different technology related projects and things regarding in finance. So thanks once again, and have a happy weekend. Please enjoy your weekend, be safe, and take care. Thomas, you take care of yourself and have a great day. Thanks again.
Nnamdi, thank you.